Council Bluffs Savings Bank, you can get the protection you need from the bank you trust.
The only thing more important than knowing your money is safe is the assurance that your identity has protection. Council Bluffs Savings Bank, hometown banking the way it used to be.
All right, let's kick it off. Mike.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Dellinger with Advanced Southwest Iowa Corporation, and I just asked if we could.
If you would lean over a little bit.
I would
and
lean
then
over like that. Mike Dellinger, Advanced Southwest Iowa Corporation, 149 West Broadway. I just wanted to visit with Bob Muntz here today, also from the Council Bluffs Growth Alliance and the Chamber of Commerce. And we just want to give you a brief update on some things we've been working on, things that we see in the future, and then answer any questions you might have. And this handout is just a reminder to you, the makeup of Advanced Southwest Iowa Corporation, the board of directors, our ex officios, and our partners. So you can see that a year and a half deep into the effort, we have a pretty good team put together. And I just wanted to go over a couple things to kind of rehash them, reiterate them for the public. Advanced Southwest Iowa Corporation was created in January of 2014 as a partner to the Greater Omaha Economic Development Partnership. One stop, one region, accomplishing more together. It's a not-for-profit, a 501c6 that's funded by the City of Council Bluffs and Pottawatomie County. Each of those entities invests $100,000 a year. In April of this year, Mills and Harrison counties joined the partnership. So in addition to the funding from the city and the county, basically Advanced Southwest Iowa Corporation acquired the former Greater Council Bluffs Regional Economic Development Partnership, which was a three-county marketing partnership involving our three counties. And those assets, about $42,000 and a website and some other materials were used, basically were acquired by Advanced Southwest Iowa to bring Mills and Harrison counties in. And the reason that we brought Mills and Harrison counties into the partnership is because our three counties are the part of the Omaha Council Bluffs Metropolitan Statistical Area. So it's a natural fit to have our three counties be part of the Greater Omaha Economic Development Partnership. This is a unique partnership structure. You might remember that Advanced Southwest Iowa Corporation, as its staff member, I can actually be called on to work in any of the 8 counties or any of the 5 partner counties. We have 3 counties of our own, on any project within the region. Obviously, our focus is in our 3 counties in Iowa, but nonetheless, as one of the partners, any of my expertise might be called into a project that, as has happened earlier this year, on a project that's currently still under consideration in Nebraska. Some of the projects we've worked on in our counties have been Gavilon, Cresco Capital, which are located in Carter Lake, the XTL project that you supported and is underway, and a project that currently is underway with the Industrial Foundation that Mr. Munt has out in South Point Industrial Park that involves Fremont contract carriers. That was a lead that was generated to you by us. We've had more than 270 network contacts from opportunities in southwestern Iowa and Greater Omaha. And see, I said I wasn't going to use a datum, and there I did. It's constantly networking across the country, relationships that we build, companies that we know, site selection consultants, accounting firms, development corporations. Those are our targets, the entities that we want to understand what Council Bluffs and our three counties have to offer as part of the Greater Omaha region, and as to why we would be the best location for their investment. Currently, our team is working on the launch of AdvancedSouthwestIowa.com. And we're replacing or succeeding our previous website, iowasleadingedge.com, if you remember that brand. We inherited that from the Bread Group I noted, and we're working now with a national firm to launch AdvancedSouthwestIowa.com this year that basically will be a portal to the information that people seek that are the outsiders looking to invest in the region, but also we're designing it so that people within the region will know more about what's going on in our 3 counties. One of the things that we've found is in our region, there's not a lot of intelligence when it comes to the Nebraska counties. People in that side of the region don't recognize how much of a playground opportunity there is here in Iowa within the region. So we're really working on 3 things: the outside message to the potential investors and those who consult them, the internal market, the young professionals, the retirees, those who might take advantage of life over here, and then those that will recognize how we complement the SelectGreaterOmaha.com website, our regional website. We want to make sure that it integrates well with that. So basically, we've been averaging about 1 inquiry or request for information a week over the last year. Most of them have been in food processing in the last year, and we found on the team By the way, Mr. Reeder and Mr. Gross have been very helpful to me, and kudos to them and to all of your department heads, but their two departments in particular, and I shouldn't forget Waterworks either with Doug, but those three departments are critical in providing the information that we need to help those who are asking understand if we might fit the bill. Food processing, transportation and logistics, manufacturing, but we've obviously seen an increase in interest in corporate office space as well because of the project at River's Edge. And we've submitted that 3 times since the project was launched earlier this year. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful on any of the 3 yet, but it's a great tool for us to use to help try and bring corporate office opportunities to the region. And one of the areas we're going to focus on strategically, the regional partnership, is Sean Johnson, who's a native of Council Bluffs, was recently named the Senior Director for Business Attraction on the Greater Omaha staff. And Sean and I, therefore, are teammates as Advanced Southwest Iowa works on the attraction side of things. We've drilled down some insurance companies, and we have about 9 or 10 prospects that the state of Nebraska has identified that would be good into this region, and we're going to try and complement that with some information from the state of Iowa. And then literally what we're going to do is we're going to create a cost sheet and go to these companies and show them, we think we can save you this amount of money if you were to do something along these lines in Omaha, in our region, Greater Omaha. Would you be interested in doing that? And more what we're going to do is take our message and our competitive offers directly to companies in addition to working with site selection consultants. And as you can imagine, the data suggests that our community is most often eliminated not based upon labor availability. That's the number 2 issue. We have a low unemployment rate, so companies typically are concerned about a pipeline of available workforce. The number 1 issue is real estate. We're not real estate prepared to be competitive, and we face this issue a lot. The mayor, Sharon as my board president, the teammates that I mentioned in the audience, that's where we get dinged most often. And as a result of that, of us working on those data, I'm going to turn this over to Bob, because Bob Munt from the Chamber of Commerce and the Growth Alliance, the Industrial Foundation, has answered this question for us on some real estate that you're all working on now. And Bob just wanted to give some updates to the public on that as well. But we can't just stop there, folks. We have to continue this idea of capital planning and helping the city understand what the market needs from us and what we need from the market. And because of that, Sharon White, as our board president, asked that we would do some strategic planning in January. Since Advanced Southwest Iowa Corporation has expanded to the 3 counties now, we want to update ourselves, and we hope to involve you in that process as we start into the new year. So I'll let Bob continue now with his update, and then certainly if you have any questions for me today or at any time, I'm available at your convenience. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Mike. I'm Bob Munt. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Council Bluffs, 149 West Broadway also. Mike and I work really, as you mentioned, as a team in this whole economic development effort. And as we pull the effort together, there's a couple of other areas outside of what Mike does from an attraction standpoint that we really focus on through the Alliance. One of those areas is retention and expansion of our existing industries and working with them to make sure that they're healthy, that they're growing, that they have the tools and the policies that they need to grow and expand. And so much of my work is done basically conversing and talking with a lot of our existing industries, primarily our primary employers that are here in Council Bluffs. A couple weeks ago, I know Al was part of a tour that we did out at the Tyson plant, and we'll be doing those on a monthly basis for all of you to kind of participate in some of those, and we'll try to do those at times that you can do those, but it's an opportunity for us to get you all out into those communities and out into those companies to take a look at what they do on a daily basis, the people that they employ, the type of impact that they have here. And so as we move forward with those programs, we're going to want to keep you involved with those as well. One of the areas that Mike touched on that we're very involved with, again in partnership with the Greater Omaha Partnership, is really talent and workforce development. What types of labor do our companies need in order to fill those jobs that are available right now today? A lot of technology jobs, a lot of manufacturing, processing types of jobs, but also jobs that we sometimes don't think about. Truck drivers, machine mechanics, refrigeration mechanics, refrigeration engineers. All of those types of things are things that you don't necessarily see in the newspaper advertised every day, but we need those types of workers here. So Lori Shields in our office has now been the person that we've basically appointed to be our point person on that. Lori will be working with our community colleges. She'll be working a lot with the four-year colleges in the region, with our technology and trades associations in the region to try and identify those people not only in those fields currently today, but potential candidates that can be quickly educated in those fields to take over some of those jobs. Things, again, welders is another one that we really struggle for. So trying to get people into those professions and into those businesses, she'll be working a lot with them. We also do a lot of work with small business and entrepreneurial development, kind of those business startups that you look at. We work very closely with Iowa Western Community College, the Port, and their entrepreneurial center out there, working a lot with places over in Omaha, the technology centers over in Omaha. University of Nebraska, Omaha has a great facility over there. Creighton, all of those universities have very good resources for us to draw from for young entrepreneurs and people looking to get in and start their own business. We also work a lot with businesses that are in the 3 to 5 year development area, kind of that critical stage of make it or break it types of things, and so making sure that we connect them with resources in the community that are available to help them. A couple of examples of that. One big example right now is our Grow Pottawatomie County Fund, or Grow Pottawatomie Fund. We just recently funded 2 companies, expanding companies right now, working with SBA and the Grow Pottawatomie National Fund, basically to get those folks funded so that they can expand. So we'll continue those programs as we move forward. Another area that Mike mentioned was land and building development. One of the areas, key areas that we're focusing on right now is land development and building development. You have an opportunity tonight to help us with that at the rezoning the public hearing for the rezoning that we're going to be having. So again, we continue to look for new ground, new available property that we can purchase. We have a database of available buildings in town that we access continually when people call us and want space. We have access to those types of things, and then we're members of a number of other real estate types of databases that we can get into and find out where those buildings are available. And the last thing that I'll touch on is transportation and infrastructure. We've done a lot of work over the last several years on transportation, making sure that we have the right transportation available for our businesses and industries, working with Greg Reeder, Don Gross, and others to make sure that we have the critical infrastructure that we need to service those industrial parks, but also to service the existing business and industries that we have. So those are some of the areas that our alliance works with, and we cooperate very tightly with Mike and the Greater Omaha Partnership and the things that we do. The Chamber itself is still involved with public policy, so we're working very hard with public policy to make sure that we keep our business environment friendly to those companies looking to grow and expand. And then lastly, certainly not least, we have our membership base that we work with as a chamber to make sure that they're getting the services that they need as chamber members and as viable community businesses here in Council Bluffs. So we're very busy working with that. It's been a great partnership, and we appreciate your support in that total effort. So thank you. If there are questions, Mike or I would be very happy to answer any of those.
I just want to point out one thing. Mike had said that any of the 8 counties could draw on his expertise, and that conversely is true of any of the representatives of the 8 counties. So if somebody in Fremont has a special area of expertise, we can draw on their expertise. So.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Bob, can you give the council a little more information on what we mean when we talk about go-ready sites and how the Bassey property fits in with that?
Yeah, I sure can, and that's kind of the hot topic these days is go ready, and what that means is that it's ready for a developer to basically come in and put a spade in the dirt. In the past, we haven't necessarily had those, and if you'll see, sometimes when you drive around Iowa especially, you'll see, an industrial park there. In all likelihood, it doesn't have the infrastructure and stuff ready for it. It's not go ready. What go ready means is that all the environmental work has been done, all the platting has been done for that particular piece of property, all the infrastructure is there, sewer, water, electricity. There's a plan for drainage in the area. Everything is ready to go should a developer come in and say, I want that 38-acre site. We have all the plans in place to basically start the next day putting in infrastructure, and for all practical purposes, that developer can start digging within a week or so of when they close on the property. So it helps to speed that timeline from the time that they commit to it to the time that they're ready to go, and that is critical in today's world. How fast can you get my building up and operating so that I can start making money? That's critical.
I just have one last thing. What has the involvement been with our chamber for job placement for ConAgra employees, that a lot of which live in Council Bluffs?
Yeah, absolutely. We last week we were in D.C., and when they got the news, as of last week we've met, I think, 4 different times on, and we're partnering with Omaha on all this, but we've developed a job site for those employees that are affected by the move. We've contacted, what did we say this morning, 127 different companies that are looking for employees. We are connecting those people that are looking for employees with those employees that are looking for work. Whether or not they match up perfectly, we're not sure. But as of this morning, we have basically 1,000 people looking for jobs, and we have about 2,700 jobs that are available. So we've connected them. Our message to them is, ConAgra may be moving, but we don't want you to move. We want you to stay here, work for the companies that we have here, and to try to really provide a bridge to not disrupting their lives any more than they already are. And so we're really working with the Omaha Chamber to do that. A lot of our companies over on this side of the river are participating in that. Some of our manufacturers, as some of those areas that I mentioned earlier with refrigeration mechanics and those types of things, we're finding those. UP is another one that's involved in that search and is part of that process as well. So we're hoping to connect all of those people as best we can to available jobs that would be available here.
Thank you.
There was a newspaper article on the specific to ConAgra. I thought that it mentioned the jobs in the Council Bluffs facility were not at risk. Is that still correct, or did something change?
No, that's still correct.
Okay.
Yeah, again, a lot of the people that are working at corporate live in Council
Live in
Bluffs,
Council
and
Bluffs,
so
so we
we're
wanna keep
trying to
them.
keep
Right.
them here as
Sure.
well.
Good.
Um,
I just panicked for a minute. I thought
No,
something
no,
changed on
no.
the
As
Council
far as we
Bluffs side.
know, again, it's a corporation that's going through huge changes, and so they are looking at every nickel and dime. They're looking at every process that they do. They're looking at bottom line dollars and returns, and so they're evaluating every one of the facilities here. So while we are safe for the minute, I think we need to be continually vigilant to make sure that this plant continues to be as productive as it is, and making sure that we continue to meet the needs of the folks that are here.
Along the line of technical jobs
Yeah.
and the need for more of those types of skills, what's the interface with Iowa Western in terms of helping them, I guess, recruit or entice incoming students to really consider those types of jobs? Because I don't think a lot of young people understand the potential of those, and at the same time, potentially bring in some of those people that have been outsourced or displaced and say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to take on a new skill set and make some good money.
3 things. All those things are being addressed. I'll address your last comment first. Iowa Western Community College, Metropolitan Community College, I can't remember the other 2 that we're working with, but all of them have training and retraining programs that have been made available to those folks from ConAgra. The second point that you made was, how do we connect the available jobs that we have with young students, basically, or people that are looking to get in 2 ways. First of all, Iowa Western does a great job of helping us to identify what types of training programs that they have. So they work very closely with our companies in training those people. A great example of that that's cited often is ACETA Robotics, the technologies. They've got those robots at Iowa Western. They're training kids on those programs. They train, I think it's a 1-year program at Iowa Western, then they do a 6-month internship in the shop at ACETA, and they figure out if they are really meant for those jobs. But they have those skills, and of course the transfer of those skills goes to a lot of different companies that we have here as well. And the last thing I would say on that is, we're starting much earlier than that. We are having career fairs, we are having company tours for freshmen, 8th graders in those particular areas, to make sure that they kind of understand what jobs are available and what types of education it takes to get into those jobs, and that they don't necessarily have to look at a 4-year college if they're not, like my daughter, necessarily not designed for a 4-year college. Maybe a 2-year program is better for them. And so we're trying to get that into the schools, that, we have jobs here that are available. They're not necessarily 4-year jobs, but that doesn't mean they don't pay well. We're seeing some of our welding jobs and some of our jobs at ACETA and jobs other places in the community are paying very well. Truck drivers, if you can pass a drug test and you can get your license, that's a great opportunity. So again, there are jobs out there that aren't necessarily for your education types of jobs that I think are great for a lot of our folks here.
The tours are a great idea, by the way, because I know just from our tour out at the Tyson's plant, I was amazed the amount of robotics and automation that they had in there. It's a pretty advanced factory, so I
Yeah,
was
it's
very
not the
impressed.
factory of yesteryear, that's for sure.
That's right.
Thank you again for all of your time and
Bob, one thing
efforts.
that,
Yeah.
that I'll bring up that I brought up to you previously, and I don't know that I've got a comfort level in your answer, but through the years, this body has donated annually to the Potawatomi County Growth Alliance, and there, through those years, have been a reservoir of money buildup. Two areas where the money's been restricted, and then one where the money just wasn't spent, and it was almost $200,000. The Potawatomi Growth Alliance no longer exists, and so I would expect that this, and this money was contributed from a variety of sources, but the major source was the city of Council Bluffs, and so I would expect some accounting as to how that money, where it ends up and how it gets spent.
Yeah, there were three sources for that money primarily, Matt. One was the city, one was the county, and one was the iOS Foundation. Each year, the city contributed $100,000.
To
County.
us, iOS contributed to us, and we contributed
Well,
to you, so I know that technically
So
that's
so
where it went
100,000 from the city, 100,000 from the county, and then 150,000 from Iowa West, which came through the city and then came to us. So 350,000 roughly. And you're right, there was a reserve that was accumulated through that time. That reserve now is going into an economic development fund, and we will hold that separate. So 300,000, I think, is going to be in that fund, and that will be used basically for projects that come up that aren't necessarily budgeted for within the Alliance budget or within Advanced Southwest Iowa. So if the city wants to do some type of a study, if they want to do some type of an image campaign, if they want to, they can come to basically the chamber and the Alliance and say, this is a project that we have, we'd like to do this, and then we can draw from those funds as well. It's kind of a partnership where we can kind of work together to decide how can we best leverage that money to make an impact on us. So that's our plan for that in the future.
frankly where I don't have a comfort level. I mean, is the money there, isn't there? When we come and ask for it, it's gone, it doesn't.
No, it is
exist
there.
anymore.
It'll
Somebody
be-
else asks for it, it's, you know.
No, it is there, and we can't spend that 300,000 without coming to you guys and asking to do that. Now, we've set that account up. We haven't transferred all the funds yet to do that, but that will be set up, and that's how we'll address that in the future.
And would then that be under the review and purview of the Advanced Southwest Iowa, or is that just something that's?
It's really under the purview of this body, essentially. I mean, we can come to you. The county can be a part of that. I mean, we need to really kind of set up that board yet as to who's on that board. But if it's members of this council, Advanced Southwest Iowa didn't really contribute anything to that, so I'm not sure. But it would be the city, it would be the county.
I just want somebody to have oversight over it.
Yeah, it would
I
be.
just don't want it to disappear.
It would be the city and the county and a representative probably from the Alliance that would look at that. And again, would take approval from all three bodies to be able to spend those dollars.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mike, before we finish up, can you just give a little background on the We Don't Coast and also the relationship of Advanced Southwest Iowa with the IED and how that's being strengthened?
Well, I couldn't understand you. Would you say that again? We Don't Coast, obviously, is the regional brand that's been adopted, and we all participated in it now. We're all using it individually. So that's something that has really made an international splash. The Greater Omaha Chamber has been very reckless, as it were, and aggressive in getting it out. So We Don't Coast is a brand that people recognize now. Most often in advertising or marketing, you don't use a negative. But in this instance, we wanted to use a negative because it made people stop and think about what doesn't coast. Well, it might be that we don't live on the West Coast or the East Coast. It might be that we work hard and we pedal hard, we don't coast. The whole idea is we just keep moving forward. And then next, the IEDA, the Iowa Economic Development Authority, we're going through an exercise right now that actually in a couple of weeks, the director of IEDA will be in town to visit with a number of us, because what we're facing in our region is an issue of for example, Omaha-based or Nebraska companies in Omaha looking to Council Bluffs or Pot County or our 3 counties as a place where they could relocate to further their business plan. Well, we don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. That doesn't do anybody any good in the region. But at the same time, we have to be very cautious, very careful about doing what's best for the business within the region. So that's a discussion we're having now as regional partners with our Omaha partners. We have one example right now that we're working on both sides of the region. And it's a company in Omaha that has approached us to ask about the opportunity to relocate here. So we're working through this together, and we've asked the state to give us some direction as well. So Sharon, as my board president, and the mayor in a couple of weeks will be involved in some meetings with IDA to talk through this. Again, the key is we'd like to keep companies growing where they are first, but we want to keep them in the region utmost. We want to do what's best for the company. So if a company says to us, look, I either have to be on your side of the river or leave the region altogether, then we know we have something we have to focus on. But what we want to do is make sure Council Bluffs companies grow in Council Bluffs, Omaha companies grow in Omaha, Fremont, and so forth. But the bottom line is, as economic development partners, we're here to serve that company's needs, because if we do what's best for the company, we're all going to win. And that's a key thing we're working on right now. Does that help?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jim, Sawyer Building? Thank you.
Jim Royer, J Development Company, 142 West Broadway, Suite 140 in Council Bluffs. What I put in front of you today is probably something maybe you remember seeing maybe around a year ago when we approached the council to talk about outdoor seating on the Sawyer Building at 125 West Broadway. We didn't get approval at that time, and since then we've learned a few things. One of them is it's tough to lease the commercial space to a restaurant without outdoor seating. And we also think it would just add to the whole block, we think, just make it look a lot better. But one of the issues that came up then, and it's still here now, is we would propose to eliminate 5 parking stalls on the street. Since then, we've kind of scratched our head trying to figure out a way to get through this, and right now there's about 26 to 28 parking stalls underneath our parking deck behind the building. And one of the things I've been throwing around with Greg Reeder and a few people is, what if we eliminated the 5 stalls on the street, but yet had an agreement with the City of Council Bluffs to let them put 25 to 28 meters, parking meters, under our deck right behind the building. And of course, we'd have to work through that. It's revenue sharing probably after all of the material and labor putting in the meters, but it's just something that we wanted to throw out there. We'd really like to come back to council and talk about this again.
So you'd take away 5 and you'd add back 25?
Yeah, 25 to 28 or 9. We're still working through some handicap parking stall scenarios underneath the deck right now. The deck underneath there, that surface parking lot, on either side of the building, there's a sidewalk that gets you back to Broadway. Then that sidewalk can get you to the crossing that goes, across Broadway and to the Vine Street parking lot, or the businesses on the other side.
Well, parking's always a problem down there. Looking at a net gain of 23 possible stalls would certainly help. Would certainly help the situation. Is there still room on the sidewalk for people to walk? I can't really judge.
Yeah, it's the sidewalk right now. If you see that 10-foot 2-inch,
Yes.
that's the sidewalk width.
Oh, okay.
By borrowing the street and putting a sidewalk there, we were able to get a pretty wide sidewalk to.
Gotcha.
I also think that maybe squeezing that drive lane down to 12 foot 1 inch might tend to slow traffic down or help to slow them down just a little bit. It's a little bit of a adventure at times, certain times of the day to cross the street there, whether you're on the designated crossing or not. There's some things we'd like to maybe do there also to maybe slow down traffic a little bit. Not get,
I don't know if you're aware that there, tonight is another reading of a traffic study, or not traffic study, moving to a more proactive way of timing the lights on Canesville, which would take some of the traffic off of
Right.
Broadway.
yeah, baby steps, I think, and just
Right.
nothing too drastic to, we don't want cars to not drive down the street. We just want them to slow them down a little bit. Or if they're not going to stop there, just to, like you said, take Canesville and stay on that.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go on ahead.
Thank you. I take your point about certainly when West Washington disappeared, or much of it did, and Canesville was built, yes, about over 40 years ago now. The goal is to get through traffic to use that street as opposed to, and West and East Broadway would become more of a destination spot as opposed to a throughway. There are things we could do, certainly, as Lynn has indicated, that getting the timing of the lights right is one of them. I think one of the things we also might want to look at is we have lights every block, and sometimes traffic lights, and sometimes every half block on Highway 6, and that defeats it as a throughway, so that's something. And those were designed in an era when Midlands Mall was there, and it's not quite the same traffic in and out. And so we might want to look at that as part of this as well, because people will use that route if it's convenient. And there are an awful lot of lights that way. And there should be an awful lot of lights on the West Broadway and East Broadway because there are people there. But the other side's more of a throughway. And so I throw that out as something we maybe ought to consider. I think that is a major detriment for people using Canesville currently, because it's almost faster sometimes to take the Broadway route, and that's completely opposite of why that whole thing was designed. So, but certainly lowering or reducing the width of the street to still a generous by modern standards width would make it a lot safer for pedestrians. And as part of also, as you have wonderfully restored that urban wall as opposed to a suburban setback, which is completely awful in an urban environment, helps slow people down too. I know some people have expressed frustrations to me, and I imagine others, about how they feel it's closed in, but that's the point. It's an urban environment. It causes people to go slower, and some people that frustrates, but that's the whole point. And then most people, once they hear that, then realize, okay, they didn't realize the whole point of that was to slow it down and to make that a destination. And then most people seem to be supportive of that. And so I say that to you as well as for the benefit of my colleagues in case maybe they hadn't heard that, though I imagine they have.
Yeah, that is really the intent, and it'll take a little while for us to get there, but we want to make the 100 block a destination. We've always wanted to do that, and we also want to make it so you know you've arrived in the 100 block. I don't know what that is. We have a lot of ideas going around in our head, but we just want it to be welcome to the 100 block. And there are a lot of people walking around and crossing the street and spending money and doing what they should be doing, I guess.
I also want to say, if I may, as you know, we disagreed on the front of it on some of the financing, certainly some pointed disagreement, respectful but pointed. But because the building as designed went through, as I've said then and will say now, I very much want to see it succeed. And I believe it's been a fantastically good product. And as I say, we may have disagreed on a few things up front, but I'm a grown-up, so I look at it and I want it to succeed. Just because I didn't get my way on one part of it, it doesn't matter. And so I like what you've done. And if you come forward with that, with a net gain of parking, I very much want to sleep on it. But as one of the people who last time voted against removing some of the street parking, that is quite a generous offer, and I would want to sleep on it because that may very well change my mind because it'd be new facts. So I would like to hear more about it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So I would be in favor of elimination of the parking. I think it's a safety issue. I mean, you see every day people park and then jaywalk, you know, from their cars directly across the street. I think eliminating parking on that side would encourage safer behavior. Certainly, you know, compensating it with additional parking is a huge benefit. I think narrowing the curb will make the traffic go a little bit slower. It's fairly common knowledge that narrow roads are forcing drivers to go slower. Where we would go from here with this is I would propose that we process a easement for outside dining, which is the process that's in place. And we would, assuming the council would go that direction, they would get an easement that allows them to have, it's a 5-year easement, which is our typical, but we wouldn't require them to implement the changes to the curb until they have a tenant that would justify the huge expense. I'm sure Jim would tell you, but it's going to be in the tens of thousands, if not $100,000 to make all these modifications. It's going to be at his expense. I guess I would suggest you not require him to do that until he knows that somebody willing to take advantage of it. So from here, if we could, Nate wants to kind of think about it, but within the next day or two, if you can kind of let me or Dick or Matt know that you have an interest in seeing this go further, we can pursue bring the easement back for council consideration. And at the same time, we would do an easement for the metered parking as well, so we kind of do those in parallel.
You know, Greg, I have one question. I've been asked several times if one of the things, I know when this came up last time, there was concern about pedestrian safety without parking there. I was in favor of the outdoor dining at that time because I feel like if we can do that on both sides of the street, it really does make it feel like a destination. The question I've had numerous times is, would it slow traffic down to change out the intersection of First and Broadway to a stop sign instead of a light? That way, because right now you get a chain of cars coming through there, you might get it, and the ones that run the yellow light to boot, they can get a pretty good speed going through there. But if you're coming through from a stop sign, you're coming from a complete stop, we hope. Would it slow things down, and is that even a consideration?
And if I may piggyback on that, as a possible alternative is if first, because since that's, I guess, ground zero, if you will, for our traffic system of what's west, what's east, what's north, what's south on our traffic grid, if it didn't make sense to do a stop sign there, I don't know. Perhaps it would make sense at the very least to do it where North 2nd and Park come together as a bit of a jog, but they basically come together as an intersection with West Broadway between the 1st and 2nd 100 blocks. And maybe as a trial before expending the cost of changing infrastructure, maybe making the existing traffic light system blink red all 4 directions and try that for a couple months and see if it does slow things down through that block.
My question was second, not first.
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
wouldn't want to do it at first. You're right.
And I was just throwing that as, it may work on
That's
both
the
ends,
better
but
location.
I'm wondering if perhaps there's too much traffic going through from Madison.
We
Perhaps.
somewhat
Yeah.
digress from the issue at hand, but
Well, but if it takes.
if
it
you want to
needs
slow,
safe-
all those things would absolutely slow the traffic down, but be careful what you ask for. There's 11,000 cars a day that travel on Broadway, and if every one of them has to take their turn at a 4-way stop or flashing red, you're going to have them backed up for blocks and blocks and blocks.
What would
I
the
would hope they'd
percentage
go the other
switch to
way.
Kanesville?
I know I would.
Yeah.
Well, Kanesville is somewhat at capacity as well. I mean, that's the problem. Pierce, Broadway, and Kanesville all are somewhat at capacity. So, yeah, you can try and force them to go somewhere else.
You run the risk of having people back up too on Pierce Street.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing. Anything you do at First Street's going to
Yeah, and I really,
interfere with First and Pierce intersection. Those 2 signals are actually one controller. They work in unison there.
yeah, I misspoke on first anyway. I wouldn't have wanted to see it there. I really intended to say second, not first. Yeah, first is too busy.
I think maybe we ought to consider at least trying it, not pull everything out, but it wouldn't cost us anything.
So they're talking on the west end of the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and with the intent being they would be going by his parking. I only suggest it because that was what came up the last time, was that people inherently will drive faster if there's not a car parked there. And I thought if there was some
No,
way to slow them down.
We've done speed studies, and to be honest, it's not as bad statistically as people make it out to be. It seems bad because it's a pedestrian area, and cars are traveling 25 to 30 mile an hour. That seems very fast through that corridor, but the traffic studies showed the traffic, if we got everywhere in town traffic doing less than 5 mile an hour over the speed limit, it would be a huge success. But
True.
the problem is a perception problem, I think, rather than a actual, that's not to say there's not outliers. When we record them, we get the 50 mile an hour, guy at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I was late.
Yeah, and part of it, incentivizing West Canesville there will be with the new lighting system. I know it can be difficult if you live right off that street sometimes to get a green, to get on to Canesville. I take that point, but there are an awful lot of times where it's green that direction, and there's not necessarily cars going. So right now, I'll speak for myself, there isn't much of an incentive to use Canesville because it seems not any faster and sometimes slower than to use Pierce, for example, which is basically a straightaway, even though it's not really supposed to be. It becomes the de facto straightaway, which seems less safe to have that one be. So maybe it's just something to look at as we try to channel the through traffic in town or otherwise onto the street that presumably was designed for it. That was designed to carry the traffic through.
40 years ago, yeah.
Sure. I just don't think it's meeting current modern conditions. It's not a criticism of what was done 40 years ago. I just think times have maybe changed, and we should look at it. I don't pretend to have the right answer, but
Well, that's one reason why we're spending $400,000
Indeed.
to put in an upgraded traffic signal
oh,
control
I
system.
agree. I agree.
So if you would, in the next day, we'd like to kind of get this going so he knows how to market his facility if this is the direction we want to go. But if we can get 3 maybes out of the council to proceed, we still have to go through the easement process and the lease agreement for the parking. That would give Jim some idea of where to go with this.
All right. Any other questions?
So we
Thank
just
you.
email you, Greg?
Yeah, I'll bring it back to the council if that's,
Okay.
I don't want to bring it back if it's a hell no, and, because it's a fair amount of effort we have to notify everybody on the block, the public hearing, and
Right,
so there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes into it.
okay,
Try the red light in a second.
Thank you.
thanks.
All right, we're moving on to reviewing agenda.
Easier
Are there any
businesses too.
me, they're
questions on the consent agenda?
Because right now, if I had to say, I'd say that's a conditional yes. But I wanna
Hearing
see-
none, any questions on the public hearings?
I think so. Sorry, one second.
Any questions on the ordinance for second reading?
Yes.
Flying.
Just a quick question on 5A. It seems, we're just changing the word, so would it be appropriate, Dick, to waive third on that?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no significant change there.
And there's been a request on 4E also to waive third.
To waive third? Okay.
Would like to close on the property, but if there isn't anybody here to object.
Are any of the ones on public hearing tonight, has anyone, I don't believe I have received any comments that would be considered critical or even neutral for them. I didn't know if, it seems to me many of them could perhaps waive third.
Which is true,
So I just throw that out there as
Okay.
a thought.
especially Steve, you have to read it again.
Anything else on the ordinance for second reading? Anything on the resolutions?
On B, I just have general comments on the bid items, as usual. The comment this time is of all the bids, I know we've seen some prices that are higher than what the engineer's estimate, and I was really pleased to see that all of these were less than the engineer's estimate. And then interestingly, D, there were 4 bids that were pretty darn close on the spread, so I don't know what happened out there in the bidding environment, but it's to the taxpayers' benefit that all these were less.
Al, you want to jump back to A?
Yeah, if I could. And Ms. Reeder, thank you very much for the responses back to the questions I posed. I just wanted to clarify some of the, I guess, cost estimates that have been put out in the past. I know that's not technically part of the MOU, but they have been discussed in the press and how we anticipate moving forward. So if I understand the staff write-up in the newspaper article, we're looking at cost for West Broadway for both the street and sewer reconstruction is roughly about $27 million. And stop me if I misspeak at any point. Yeah. Well, it doesn't include water?
It includes water, and it includes the
Okay.
beautification modifications that would be paid by iWest.
Okay. So, and then the segment for North 16th is 10 million. Right. Sound right? Yeah. And that would that also include the sewer along North 16th? I didn't know what the age of that particular segment was. Okay. So it kind of crosses, it doesn't parallel. Okay. Good to know. So right now we're both segments would total about $37 million then, somewhere in that ballpark. Have a tentative state recommendation anticipated at $20 million, which has been outlined. So the city requirement, roughly speaking, I understand is about $17 million difference in all these things put together. That's for West Broadway and the North 16th.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
the only thing I would add to that is that's roughly, a large portion of that is whether the DOT owns the road or the city owns the road. It's still going to be the city's responsibility. Utilities are the city's responsibility regardless of jurisdiction.
Yeah, I understand. And that,
And North 16th really isn't in need of immediate replacement. So it would cost 10 million, but it's not 10 million.
Yeah, we have no plans to replace 16th Street in the foreseeable future. We've got some things that we're going to do in association with the school project.
yeah.
And then the area out, by Kmart or the Walmart is, something that we're going to look at.
Yeah, I understand. That's why the costs on that are considerably less, because you're not having to do a total sewer replacement along that. You're basically resurfacing the pavement.
Well, I would say from Avenue G to Broadway, we don't have any plans to do anything for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
It's good enough condition.
Okay. Now, the segment then for Canesville out to I-80, would this be done with Iowa Department of Transportation as a separate agreement? In other words, the Broadway and North 16th is one master agreement, and then the Canesville segment would be a secondary agreement?
Correct. The MOU just says we agree to do these,
Yep.
we agree to look at these things, but the actual TJ agreements would be 2 separate ones, and the only one that's even being planned at this time is the first step.
Understand, yeah.
So there would be a future TJ agreement, for the east portion of Highway 6.
And the current project under design now is from Interstate 80 to approximately Kmart, which will be completely replaced, so that will be new.
Now, for that Canesville segment, what are the sewer requirements along that stretch? What do you expect the impacts to be?
Well, again, there's not much sanitary sewer in that. There'd be storm sewer, but it's not a major storm sewer
Okay,
system. It's more road
okay.
highway itself.
So coming back to the North 16th analogy, then, we would expect the total replacement cost for that, if you wanted to go that route, would be considerably less than they would for the West Broadway segment, correct?
On a per mile basis, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just trying to get this straight in my head here, what we can kind of be looking towards in the future.
And all those sewer costs are ours regardless.
Right.
Yep, understand. Okay.
Greg, before you leave, I overlooked one additional question I had on that. There wasn't a whole lot of information about the 3 new employees. Can you expand more on that?
Well, they'd be utility workers. I mean, they would,
So, and it's,
entry-level positions.
okay, so they would be, obviously, this whole project is 5 years minimum out there, but those employees would be needed into the future for maintenance of roads or?
That's not necessarily true. The jurisdiction would transfer next spring, so they'd be needed immediately.
Right.
Needed immediately, right. But I mean, they'll still be needed into the future, is what I
Oh,
was
yeah,
trying to
this-
say.
They're
Yeah.
the people that are gonna be removing the snow.
Right.
Instead of IDOT.
And kinda just to frame all that, road use tax money comes from population base, not lane miles.
Yeah.
And so, at some point, I would anticipate that these improvements will generate increased population base, but that is a crystal ball projection, and so you need to realize that there will be no additional road use money available for those expenses until the population grows.
I think that's a very good point, and another point about it is, the so-called transfer of jurisdiction, the TJ. The state, as the sovereign entity, we're not. They could abolish us with a stroke of a pen as a city, or they could abolish all the county. Well, that's in the Constitution. But they could abolish the cities at a stroke of a pen. And so why I bring that up is the state could give us, given quotes, those roads right, well, not today, but, a couple days for the paperwork. They could force us to take them now without a cent. And there's precedent for that. That's happened before. Just have to look to what's now Railroad Highway. And it becomes State Highway 191 again, right south of Tri-Center School at the Harrison County line. The state gave Pottawatomie County former State Highway 191 without a cent because we were offered as a county a few years prior to that money to completely rebuild it. The county didn't want to take on, and I understand, they didn't want to take on the ongoing maintenance into the future, but then they got stuck with a road with no money, and the county taxpayer had to pay to keep it up. So I say that because I appreciate the concerns of ongoing costs into the future, especially because, as the mayor rightly points out, we don't know if, and I'll say when, the population will increase in the future, but we could get nothing as opposed to 20 million, and a bird in the hand's worth 2 in the bush to me. And so I think we ought to keep that in mind as we consider this.
And just to clarify, when you say state, you're not referencing the DOT, you're referencing the state legislature. They're the ones that would have.
I believe it would, though I think there's considerable discretion in the executive branch to do it, but off the top of my head, I don't know if it takes legislation or not. But one way or the other, they could make us take it without giving us any money, because they're the sovereign, we're not.
I'm sure if the DOT could do it, they would have done it a long time ago.
Like I say, I don't know the mechanics of it, but I would imagine it has been done before. 191's really a cautionary tale.
I think there was some legislature involved in that as well.
Yeah,
I believe there
there's a
was,
certain
now that
state
you say
senator
that.
who told his brother not to take the first salvo, and
Yeah, I think you're right.
they got snake bit because of it.
Yeah, and I just don't want us to have that happen to penny wise, pound foolish type situation.
Troy German, the district engineer from DOT, is here if you have any questions for the DOT specifically.
Before we come to that, I was just going to ask, coming back to the cost estimates for the West Broadway segment, you mentioned that included the landscaping and the decorative aspects that were set out in the corridor plan. Are you
Well,
working?
not in the corridor plan, what was there already. The brick, basically the brick, roll-lock and maybe some lighting.
Okay.
That's what's in that
That
estimate.
pedestrian lighting theme that you see in front of some of the newer buildings would be incorporated throughout West Broadway. The shorter with the flat angled top on it.
I don't believe I've seen an estimate that included the last West Broadway development plan. For one thing, there's multiple options in there, and they're not.
Well, there were, and that's kind of the point that I'm driving to are you working on parallel estimates? You know, what if the decision were made to rebuild West Broadway pretty much as it is now? Obviously, that would be a considerable amount less work involved in that, requiring less of a financial outlay to get the total project done. I don't know if you began work to itemize those types of estimates and options.
Well, actually, I think even the West Broadway plan, a lot of the options shown were on side streets and on private property. It was, if additional right-of-way was acquired, this is what we would do with it. But for the most part, that plan in our current concept is basically put back what's there, because that's all there's room for in the right-of-way.
With storm sewer.
With storm
yes,
sewer, yeah.
please.
Improved storm sewer and replacing the 100-year-old water main, and
Okay,
but
so,
it's
Now, I tell you, we bantied about just replacing the street and leaving the maintenance responsibility with the Department of Transportation, but that would take $20 million worth of local taxpayer money, and this is more than 20 million, and this is an opportunity to get 20 million of that cost funded, so.
And it's an opportunity to rebuild it to modern and standards and going into the future. You know, I think the last time it was majorly rebuilt was around 1950, I think. At least that's the best number I could find when I tried to find it. And I'd like to think that, and we all know that this street patterns and the world is a lot different today than 1950. And when we rebuild this, hopefully it will last 30 to 50 years with, you know, maintenance. But so I think we need to think about as it goes into the future, because I don't think the traffic patterns are quite the same as they were in 1950.
And I would tell
And they
you,
won't be in 2040, that's for sure.
I would tell you from an economic development standpoint, that business that now is working to acquire 25th and Broadway clearly said the reason they decided to move forward is that they'd read about the improvements on West Broadway. So
On that
I
speed
think
line.
it makes great potential for,
Agreed.
and the perception of what Council Bluffs looks like to people entering from the west will be dramatically changed.
I think that the potential to redevelop West Broadway without doing this is pretty much nil, because that means everything would stay the way it is now. We don't have $20 million to rebuild of our own money. So we haven't been able to see any major development on West Broadway. I don't think we could expect it to develop much further without that. So I just feel like, knowing that the state's not in a position to rebuild it anytime soon, we don't have the money to rebuild it without their help. I just don't think that we can pass up an opportunity to fix that street.
this is the most important street in Council Bluffs.
yeah,
It's not the most important road in the DOT system.
right.
That's,
Yeah, and I haven't heard anybody suggest that we shouldn't or couldn't resurface and redo the sewer structure along North Broadway. Clearly, that's work that has to be done. I'm just asking about whether or not we're looking at the cost and development aspects of different types of options, because I know that's something that a great many businesses that are there now are interested in learning about and knowing more, so they know what they can expect. So thank you again for your
It will
inputs.
be an uncomfortable time frame
Absolutely.
because there will be businesses that are affected, and I get calls every day in neighborhoods that it's difficult to get from my car to my front door. You can imagine when businesses relying on customers getting to their front door, but it will be, I think, well worth their sacrifice, because ultimately it will certainly help their business, so.
Well, access to businesses will be a high priority in how we face the project, and I guess that will come at a cost to the city, but that's, as we stand here, that's something we're proposing to do is.
Sure.
to-
Yeah.
best
You
we can.
raise a very good point. I think I saw perhaps a 5-stage, so I know at this point we're talking preliminarily, but a 5-stage plan, because it's kind of like when the West Broadway Viaduct was replaced. It would have been considerably cheaper to do both sides at the same time, but having traffic divert to Avenue G, having all of it divert, would have been a logistical nightmare. So it costs more to do that in dollars up front, but the disruption to people's lives and to the businesses is worth something too, and I think that's a greater. So I'm very pleased the way you've talked about, even though in a perfect world, if we shut down the street and did it all at once, they'd all go out of business, so that's not reality. But staging it so that it's the least disruptive as possible, because that road can't last forever, and right now it's in awful shape, we all know it. It's been overlaid so many times as it's been widened that, it'll be interesting to see history. It'll almost be like an archaeological dig.
1950s, I think,
Yeah.
when it was rebuilt.
Yeah, you'll see. And I can remember, strangely enough, the house I grew up in as a kid was, the city was giving away the bricks at the time, and my house was built, and my folks' house was built out of bricks. The outside of it was West Broadway, believe it or not. And that house was built in 1949, 50, so. But since then, the number of layers, it'll be kind of like when we redid the second and third blocks of West Broadway. You saw the different layers, the trolley tracks, and all the way down the original brick.
Well, and just having storm sewers, and on the corners, there are storm sewer inlets that run north and south, but in the middle of the block, there is no, and so then that water melts when there's snow and then gets splashed back on, and the freeze-thaw cycle causes huge degradation and makes the buildings dirty and look bad, and so I think it's gonna really.
Well, it's a crucial artery, in and out of our community. I assume that advance notice is going to be given as you, do this part. No, you'll just let them be surprised.
It's closed today.
Yeah. Who knows who's
We'll have
next?
to read the nonpareil.
Tim, get busy writing.
Well, I just think that the general way that you've outlined the phasing is reasonable under the circumstances, and it is going to take a lot of time.
Agreed.
And businesses, I think, understand that, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs at some point. So I think that the concern is more how it's going to leave their businesses after the construction done rather than during. So I think they're.
And I've got my fingers crossed the bids will come in a little lower. I think we did the analysis, and Greg's biting we did the analysis 5 years ago, and so we've kind of put in a factor of how construction costs have escalated, and we're hoping that the bids will come in that maybe won't.
Well, it is a good point as we do it, and as we go forward, we look to the impact and how it's going to look when it's done. That's a very good point.
Other questions on the resolutions?
On 6F, the relocation of the manholes, I guess, for the athletic complex, what exactly is it that creates the obligation for the city to relocate those manholes for that particular project? I mean, I understand the need of the desire of the school district to get it done, but
It's actually an opportunity for the city as well as the school district. They are obviously putting a lot of money into their new their stadium and et cetera. Today, we have manholes that are buried in the outfields of sports fields, which we don't have access to, and we have had a few fail that have caused quite a bit of damage and interrupted sporting events. So this is an opportunity for us to fix manholes, but while we're fixing them, relocating them outside of the sports field, which gives us better access, which allows us to do better maintenance and continue maintenance, so our actual main is improved. Our function of our main is improved by this project. That's our desire to do the project. Their desire is to coordinate with their brand new potentially turf field and not have a sewer explode in the middle of it.
It'd certainly make the games more interesting, but in any event.
Not if,
going
not,
right and he
not
reverses
if,
field.
not if you're one of the players.
So I guess my next question would be, so which was there first, the sewer lines or the ball fields?
Not sure.
Because I guess, again, if we're doing this in order to assist the school district, and that's one thing. If there's a genuine need, if there's something that benefits the city and the function of the sewers by doing this project, then that's slightly a different thing. Because if we're doing this to benefit the school district, then I guess my question is, why are we using sales tax funds to do this work?
I would answer that in, we're doing it because we are aware of their project, and that made us more aware of the potential problems that could come as a result of their project. But the need for our maintenance of our sewer and these particular manholes was there regardless of the project that the school is doing. So to me, they just go hand in hand. It's an opportunity for us to take advantage of, I guess, all the changes happening there. We should fix the problem while it's happening, rather than try to come in after the fact and spend twice as much for a known issue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, so what's the source of the problem? The project, the stadium project, or some other type of pre-existing problem?
Just limited access to manholes. That's the real problem for us as Public
Okay.
Works, which then limits our ability to maintain that sewer.
They're buried in essence, aren't they, under the grass in many instances, because there aren't manhole covers kids are having to run across on the field.
Most of them have been set about a foot low.
Yeah.
So there's
So
a foot of
it's-
topsoil and sod in the
Yeah.
outfield in
Sure,
most places.
and presumably when they go to a nicer turf, even if grass, but as I understand it, perhaps larger or better than that, it's going to be very expensive for us to access
Correct.
those, and we're going to have to put the turf back, presumably, which can't be cheap.
Well, not too long ago, we had a significant sinkhole there, and I don't know if that was because of our sewer or.
It was.
It'd be nice to get them out of
That's
the
why I say
field.
these aren't a perfect functioning system today. So there's definitely a benefit to the city to correct those issues so that we're not going out there as often. And when we do go out there, we're able to stay out of the ball fields. That's the reason we are in favor of this project.
Okay.
Because you'd have to drive equipment onto the turf and.
Right.
Yeah, well, I was just kind of curious why we would have a sewer line running through the middle of school property and ball field to begin with. And if this is a benefit to the school district, then why aren't they picking up the part of the tab for this? So, but I think you've kind of addressed that already.
And for the most part, this system doesn't serve the school grounds. It's
Okay.
going through, conveying sewer, both sanitary and storm, through their property from the neighborhood surrounding the school property. So it's not really, it doesn't just serve the
Yeah.
school district.
Well,
It
I'm
serves a
presuming
much
that
larger area.
the sewer line was there before the ball field was. I'm just presuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sewer line through a recreational area.
Just wait right there before you sit down. I only had one question. On the retrofit on the existing well, relief wells for the levee, once that is done, is there still more that has to be done to that particular levee for certification? Is that just one step in it? Or is that all that that particular levee was going to require for certification or recertification?
To make sure I answer your question correctly, when you say that levy,
Well,
what are
it's-
you speaking?
It's going to be on our agenda.
Industrial park one.
That portion of the
Yeah,
levee,
that
of the
portion.
Missouri River levee in that segment near Avenue G, is when you say that levee, is that what you're describing?
Yeah, I'm talking about where you're going in and retrofitting the existing relief wells. We had talked about this before, that you're going in and doing that. And it's Resolution 15272, if that helps, so.
Right. No, I understand what's on the agenda.
Okay.
I guess why I hesitate to answer your question is, the Missouri River levee north of I-80, let's say, is a big levee system that has other changes that will happen separate from this project.
I just mean that portion.
In that area of a couple thousand feet
Yes.
near Avenue G, this is the only project plan for certification
Okay,
purposes.
yeah, that's what I'm asking, is we're doing each one of these items, are we getting done what needs to be done then, or are there just, do you have to phase it? Like, you might have to do this and then come back next year and also do this? That's what I'm trying to
Now,
understand.
the caveat to that is maintenance. This is, the purpose of this project is for certification. There are no other projects necessary in this area for certification.
That's what I wanted to know.
There may be other items that are necessary for maintenance of the levee system, including items necessary to satisfy the Corps' annual inspection. So I can't say today that we'll never have another project in that area, because certainly we may. But in order for us to meet the criteria for certification, we do not plan to do any other projects in this
That's
area.
my question on each stage of this. So with the industrial levy, once that's done and turned over to FEMA, if they accept that, that will take care of their accreditation for the industrial levy too then?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions?
Hopefully, when we take the plaster wall down, there isn't any problems behind it.
Now.
Similar
Don't
type
jinx it.
situation.
Don't jinx
Don't
it.
jinx it.
Yeah.
Other questions on the resolutions?
Don, you were waiting. It seems even worse than normal.
It is.
It never gets better, it only gets worse. What, I don't,
Actually, this is a 6-month. If you go back to 4/21 of 15, we actually, and let me explain, when Deb does this, the council communication is like 3 weeks before the lien is actually sent over. So
some get paid, right?
so some people do pay, so that amount seems somewhat exaggerated. Give you an example, 4/1 of 14, so this is the last time that we did a 6-month. Council communication was $676,000 for a 6-month period. When we actually leaned that, it was $571, so we had almost 1,000 or 1,100 people actually come in and pay their bills. So this of 528, actually, if you go back to 4/21 of 15, which is the last time we leaned, it was 261,000. So you double that, we're at 522.
Yeah.
So we're
It's a 6-month
right around
period, not a
the
3.
same level. It's, hopefully with the new billing system, more people understand that. I know we still do have a problem with online that we can address, but it's easier to understand the new invoice, and there's quite a few of us in the room that worked on that, so hopefully that will help out somewhat. Yeah, I'm just as frustrated. You know, right now, we had 24.4% of the people not paying their bill. I did look up the Iowa utilities, and if we go back, I think last time from 4/21, after we actually leaned, we were at 14.8% of the population that didn't pay. Under the Iowa utilities, 1.85 million people under that. There's 12.4% is what they average that don't pay their bill. That's statewide for,
12.4 is average statewide?
yep, for utilities.
Jeez.
So we're almost double.
Speaking of online and the growth of this problem, when I looked online, I thought the last list of deficiencies was posted in last October.
The last line of deficiencies for
For the trash and sewer liens. So I'm wondering, you know, if, when I say October, I don't mean this past October, I mean October
14.
from 14.
a year ago, October,
Yeah.
10/1 of 14. And I don't have anything down for it. Deb's gone today, and I was trying to pull some information from her, but she'll be back in a couple days, and I'll try to put this all together for you, because there's a little misnomer of when the council communication comes out and then what we actually lien, because there's quite a few people that actually pay in that 3-week period.
We've leaned between October of 14 and current. There's been,
Yeah, we actually leaned 4/21 of 15 was the last time we leaned. And the time before that was 1/26, January 26th of 15.
I guess if, you know, we want more people to be aware of this as a problem, then I would like us to make it a little bit easier for customers be able to look online and see if their name happens to be on the list.
And we can do that as well.
Some are not always aware.
Yeah. That might be an easy way to do that. Are there any questions with regard to our weed liens? Well, I'm up here.
No,
I
although
did-
I did have a question on the billing and from some folks, and as well as myself. When I get the bill, I believe that I'm signed up for direct debit, and it doesn't, unless I could be misreading it, I don't think on the bill it reflects that I am. So there are times where I think, should I turn this in or not? And then I go into the online system, which could be more user-friendly. I'm pretty good with computers, and I get confused by it, to be honest with you. I just think if we make it simpler for people to sign up, and if it's said on the bill, do not pay, like a lot of utilities do, like my electrical bill, for example, then every time I check, because I'm frantically concerned I'm not going to pay my bill, but I am signed up, but the bill doesn't, it looks like I'm not. And
Okay,
so-
because I pay by check every 6 months,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I didn't even get a bill this time, and I asked, I didn't know under the new program if I got kicked out because I, had a balance or actually money in the bank, so to speak,
I see.
and that's why I didn't get one. Now, I don't know, I'll have to check with Deb Miller to make sure, but if you're paying online and you have a credit, you shouldn't be getting a bill.
You still do.
You still do if you do it by credit.
Yeah.
Which
If you do it
I do it by
automatic,
card.
They'll send you a bill. Yeah, 'cause I go in every time
like-
too. Then I always call like.
And it's a full bill, and
It's like a statement
and
of
so even if I have a credit, and most of the time I don't, I tend to pay it about to the penny usually, or I try, and it doesn't reflect that. So I think that might be some of the confusion.
Okay, we'll work on that.
And, and everybody does have to. I'm going to say something. Everybody has to get back in, right? And resend it.
Everybody,
I didn't know
everybody that got online has to go back in
Yeah,
and
we had to redo it now.
refile, because it's a whole new program that was just set up and approved here.
Oh,
Okay.
goody. Okay.
Yeah, so that's something
We may want to highlight that. 'Cause
Yeah.
I honestly thought I was good, and I guess
And there
I'm
should have
not.
been a letter sent out to you indicating how to do that, either through email, I don't remember, was it sent, yeah, email or
But
by
then it
letter?
got recalled. That's what was weird.
Yeah, it got
It got
recalled.
recalled,
The
and
one
then
I
there was
got,
not another one.
the one I got paper form said how to sign up, and I could have missed it because there was a lot of paper. I don't think it told me that if I were signed up already, I'd had to do it again. I could have missed it.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't see that.
Okay.
But we can readdress that if a lot of people didn't get that, to make sure for the next billing, everybody's aware of that.
I think there's just a lot of words on there, and I know it's a struggle, and it's easy to criticize from the back seat of the car, but there's just a lot of words there. So did I read all of it? No, because there were just lots of pages, and I know some of that's in case someone's not maybe so good at the computer, but it was a bit confusing.
Okay.
Don, before you sit down, I had one quick question. Can you break out on the garbage bills, how much of that is tenants who the landlord has, because the state law changed, said that, they can make the tenant pay that and be responsible for it. Any idea what percentage of the outstanding is due to tenants not paying that garbage bill and no way to collect it?
It's growing. That's all I can say at this time. I've got to, I'll have to go back, and we'll have to take a look at that. But that isn't something a new program actually pulls out, and we have to go in by hand and figure that out.
And I don't want to cause you a lot of work, but I think that it would help me to understand, I'm the first one to say that I remember the days that I had to make a decision with what gets paid this month. And so I understand it's tough sometimes. So I'm just trying to figure out if it's people still recovering from the downturn in the economy, if we've got tenants that know that there's not a lot of recourse.
Other
To
than
get
taking
that
them
money,
to
you have
court.
to take them to
Yeah.
court. And so you have to determine how much is it going to cost to do that and what's the cost-benefit analysis. So I just kind of want to understand what that percentage looks like. It would help me.
How about if we try to get something to you by the end of the week?
Well,
Oh, no rush.
I think it's important to let our legislators know also.
Well, that's
And there is a
one of the reasons.
strong landlord lobby right now that's getting a lot of bills changed that are very detrimental to the operations of the city.
Well, they're detrimental to the rest of the taxpayers in Council Bluffs because you're the taxpayers are footing the bill for these people that are not paying it. And, with, at least before, you could lien the property. So you knew if they were going to refinance or sell the property, eventually you would be able to recoup that money. But now there's just literally short of taking the tenant to court. And what are your options? The garbage man's not going to know. Even if the city said, we're not going to pick that up anymore. You're not paying, we're not picking it up. Now what, they're going to go down the street with a list? Oh, no, don't pick that one up, pick this one up. I don't know what the solutions are, but I think the numbers would be helpful for all of us, especially before the legislative season starts again. I'm always at those coffees. That's something I would want to start really hammering at those coffees every Saturday or a couple times a month.
And if I may, that brings up a point. I have gotten a lot from folks, and I see a lot online, particularly Facebook seems to have a lot of comments about this. And I think sometimes it's really easy to forget that the vast majority of our media, certainly television, comes from another state with very different laws on many, many things. And garbage is one of them. In Nebraska, the people have said, well, why doesn't the city just take it out of property tax? Well, in Iowa, that's not the law. And we don't really get a lot of Iowa television, actually none of it, except public television. And local television. So I think it's important for folks to know, and maybe the paper might be so kind as to remind folks that because we are a different state and the laws come from Des Moines in that regard, not Lincoln, that's how it's done in Iowa. It's a separate bill. Is it right or wrong? I don't know. It's just every state has the right to choose, and we're obligated as a city to follow it. So it is a separate bill. It's not part of your normal property tax. And so we can't do it the other way. And I think it's important for people to know that. Would it be simpler? Maybe certainly as a consumer, probably. But that isn't what the legislature and the governor have chosen to do.
No, I think there was a lot of confusion. People are saying we don't pay for garbage in Omaha. Well, you do.
Yes, they
It's part
do.
of your MUD bill.
Yeah.
They just didn't realize it because it's all in one bill, which is really nice.
Well, in their system, they are a state with particular electricity. They're a state with complete socialized power. They have complete public ownership of all their utilities. The only state actually that does, and Iowa definitely does not. So we have a free market system. So government can't dictate it in Iowa like they can in Nebraska.
I just think it's one of those things that if the numbers are really showing that that's where a lot of our shortfall is coming from, then it's kind of incumbent on us.
The majority isn't coming from
Okay,
that
good.
at this point in time, but
Glad to hear
that
that.
number is growing.
Okay.
The number of, and I'm pulling this a little Hannafin numbers out of the air, but the number was 8% of the total rental, wasn't it? Somewhere in that.
I'd have to go back and check, to be honest with you. But I'll get that to you.
And all of your spare time, just.
Have listed that 8% of the total rental property in town have listed the tenant as the
Oh, I see what you're
responsible
saying.
party.
Yeah, but I don't know off the top what my head what that number would be, but we'll get that to you.
But you said that you would be able to put the names of the people who were delinquent on the website?
We'll work on
so
that. That's something I think we can do, so.
Because then people can check, just to make sure that they're on the list, not on the list. That would be great.
Okay, we will try that.
And just one more thing I want to say. I want to reiterate, I think Sharon raised a very good point about how, I think there are a lot of people who, for one reason or another, forget. I suppose some people are just flat out not paying, but there are a lot of people who have to choose between their garbage bill and their prescription drugs or their food. Sure. And so, so I want them to pay their bill, but at the same time I recognize we're never going to get 100% because, and I understand why, and I think we all are in agreement that we certainly aren't trying to demonize people or choosing their medication. So I think we just have to keep that in mind. But there are some people who are just flat out not paying and certainly can afford to do it. And they're getting the service, and other people shouldn't be subsidizing somebody, especially if they can afford to pay for it. That's not right.
Aren't the tenants made aware that it's their responsibility? Do we know? I mean, I know we don't have any oversight over that, but I would hope that the landlords are advising them that that's their
Well,
responsibility.
that would be in their lease.
Good.
To be enforceable, yeah, I think it's got to be in their lease.
Yeah,
If it's
good.
not, then the landlord has some trouble.
Right. He might be on the line.
That we're looked
You let me
into,
know when
yeah.
the names are online.
Any other questions for Don? Any
Thanks.
other questions on the resolutions?
On 6C, just so I understand the traffic signaling, Greg, it ends with the project's 2 steps, and I just want to make certain I understand. It sounds like the actual system itself that will do the traffic detection will be added on, and I don't know if, is it that right now we're doing the hardware and that's the software, or I'm struggling to see the distinction, and I'm sure there's a logical one. I'm sorry, Matt.
No,
Not Greg.
no problem. Pretty much what you said is correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Each of the technologies, this is relatively new technology, each one has a different requirement for detection. So we couldn't design detection until we actually selected the vendor of the technology.
I see.
So in this case, we're buying the controller and the modification to the controller that uses the adaptive signal control. How that system works and the detection required for it will come as the second step. We'll then install the detection, and that'll be the second piece, and then it'll be a full functioning unit.
And we're, ideally, I love how we're working with the Department of Transportation so that the South Expressway system and the Canesville system will be the same system. I know we've been trying very hard to get things, or even just the type of trucks or things, so that there aren't several different languages, if you will, several different types of things that have to work together, and people have to memorize all these different brands.
Well, ultimately, we own both systems, so
Yeah.
that we were very adamant that we did not want two.
I greatly appreciate that. That makes complete sense, and it'll be efficient and save money.
Is that what that $50,000 for the South Expressway project, is that what that's for, the compatibility in the systems? The write-up had some mention about $50,000 to the South Expressway project.
That was our contribution to the project, because we
Okay.
ultimately get the benefit of it. We own it. They're using it for construction traffic. That's the reason they're partnering with us to do it, but we're cost sharing in the project,
Okay.
basically.
Gotcha.
And that was the agreement, was just, because we didn't have hard numbers, we based that off an estimate.
Okay.
And we agreed to that, and you guys agreed to that when we brought the agreement to you, but it's
right.
just a lump sum 50,000. It's not specific to any compatibility issue.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Any other questions on resolutions? All right, we'll see you at 7.
Executive session?
Oh, yeah, we
No?
have executive session now. Good call.
Motion to go into executive session?
At Council Plus Savings Bank, you still get personalized customer service.
We have identity-safe checking with LifeLock, identity theft protection.
You get personal mortgage lending to fit your needs now and in the future.
You get business banking with the latest technology, because saving you time saves you money.
At Council Bluffs Savings Bank, you get people who answer when you call and local employees who are actively involved in our community. Council Bluffs Savings Bank, hometown banking the way it used to be.
The Mid-America Center is the Heartland's premier entertainment and convention center. September 27th, Papa Roach and headliner Five Finger Death Punch rock Council Bluffs. Then rock opera takes the stage with the return of TSO November 18th. Over at the Convention Center, over 200 exhibitors are on hand at the Callahan Craft Show. And October 18th, vendors aspire to inspire at the Wedding Essentials Idea Show. Remember, the MAC offers free parking for all events. Tickets, information, and more at midamericacenter.com.